So if I could ask everyone in this room to indulge me for a minute, and I want everyone to actually bring themselves to a happy place, a peaceful place. Maybe for you all, it's a Saturday watching amazing TED Talks. Maybe it's a day at the beach with someone you love, the perfect vacation. Is everyone getting into their happy place? Boom! Just like that, one single shot, and you're the latest victim of gun violence. You see, for me, that sound is real. That is the sound I live with in my head every second of every day. Is that the last sound my daughter heard? What did she feel? Did she suffer? Everyone always says to me, I can't imagine how you feel. Well, here's what I have for all of you today, a request. I want every single one of you to imagine how I feel. I want you all to know the person you're sitting next to right now could become the latest victim of gun violence. And by imagining how I feel and by understanding that reality, you're going to be part of helping to do something about this. 40,000 people per year in this country right now die of gun violence. It's not normal. And by imagining how I feel, I'm hopeful that you will join me in this fight. Let me talk to you about my story. You know, there's no greater change to relationships than that which happens after you lose somebody that you love. There's nothing more significant. That's my brother, Dr. Michael Guttenberg. My brother was a hero of 9/11. He ran into the World Trade Center when others were running out. He was part of a group of about 10 doctors who set up the original triage. They were in the World Trade Center before the second building got hit, and they were in the World Trade Center when it collapsed. And amazingly, where they hid out did not collapse. However, after spending 16 days at Ground Zero treating people, down the road in 2013, my brother got the cancer that resulted from that. And in October of 2017, my brother died from that cancer. I remember my brother's funeral like it was yesterday. It was tragic. My brother died at the age of 50 in the prime of his life. We had about 500 people at the funeral, helicopter flyover. They closed down the parkway in New York. He was buried like a hero. And I remember thinking, I'll never, ever, ever be a part of something like this again. But I was, only 4 months later. You see, my baby, Jaime, was a victim of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas school shooting. I remember that morning so clearly, but it's the one detail that I can't remember that haunts me. That morning started like any other morning in my house, and that means with a little bit of chaos. The kids were running late, the dogs needed attention, my wife and I needed to get out the door. And what I remember about that morning is rushing my kids out the door. You gotta go, get out the door. What I don't remember about that morning is that I say the simple words to my children as I was busy rushing them to school, to the place where they're supposed to be safe, to the place where they're supposed to learn. Did I take that one last second to say, I love you? It wasn't supposed to be the last second. And I was so busy rushing them out the door that I don't think I did. And it haunts me every day of my life. I want to talk to you about Jaime. And I want to talk to you about how my relationship with Jaime has changed since February 14th. Because what you need to understand, I'm still Jaime's dad. Jaime's still my daughter. I have my son here in the audience today. We still have the in-person father-son relationship. With Jaime, I used to watch her dance. We used to watch TV together. We used to laugh. Sometimes we used to yell. I helped her study. It was all of the typical father-daughter things. And I had all the normal dreams and aspirations that a parent would have for their child. That was the relationship I had with Jaime before February 14th. The relationship I have with Jaime since February 14th is obviously quite different. Now it's about the things that I don't get to do, the things that I don't get to see. I won't see my daughter graduate. I won't see her have another birthday beyond 14. I won't see her have a first boyfriend. I won't get to walk her down the aisle. I won't get to be a grandparent to her children. And the way I get to spend time with my daughter now is at a cemetery, sitting on a bench, looking at her stone, and looking out into the distance at a lake with a fountain, and looking into the sky for some kinds of signs that we're still connected somewhere in this universe. And when I leave the cemetery, I continue with the tradition that I've always had with my daughter. Actually, it's a tradition in our house. We kiss each other 3 times to say goodbye to each other. It's our family tradition. And so when I leave the cemetery, I still kneel down and I kiss my daughter 3 times to say goodbye. Before I go any further, I think it's important for you to get to know my daughter. And so this is Jaime. Thank you. Following Jaime's murder, I went through a process of finding myself and finding my voice. In fact, it started immediately the day after. I was invited to speak. I went to the vigil in Parkland, and when I got there, the mayor asked me if I would come up and speak. I hadn't planned for it, but I said yes. And I remember a few things about that night, getting up there and crying out to the crowd about my family being broken and feeling broken. And I also remember talking to the crowd, and finally hitting me for the first time that day. We were victims of gun violence. And I went home that night, and I said it that night and all week after that, I'm going to break that effing lobby. That lobby that got in the way and allowed things like this to happen. And from that day, I've gone on a mission. In fact, just a week later, the CNN town hall, those of you who were watching it saw me confront Senator Rubio. Now, the thing that's important about that is that was the moment where I realized I no longer have this feeling of awe for people who are in a different position in life than I am. Whether they're elected, whether they're entertainers, wherever they come from. I no longer have awe. I no longer look at you as being more than me. What I look at everybody as from that moment forward was, you're either going to be part of doing something with me about this, or you won't. And I've conducted myself going forward every night since that way. We're all part of the same human experience, and we all have to deal with things like loss. I want to talk to you for the rest of my presentation about those who were part of my life before February 14th, but those who have come into my life because of February 14th. And I want to highlight one person first. He's a friend of mine who was one of the police officers who went into the building, and he is the one who found my daughter. He was a dear friend before that. He's family since then. He now shares a bond with me over loss that 2 human beings should not share. But I also have developed a lot of relationships that I never, ever, ever would have had without this having happened. Here's 2 of them, and they have meant more to me than they probably will ever know, although they're about to find out. One of them is Vice President Biden, who called me about a week after Jaime was killed and spent the better part of an hour on the phone with me. And then several weeks later, met with me in person for the better part of an hour. He spoke to me about grief, He spoke to me about loss. He's the first person to ever say, everyone grieves differently, and be prepared for it, but find ways to grieve together. He's also the first person to use the phrase with me, mission and purpose. It is his talks to me that have literally given me the foundation that I have lived my life by ever since this happened. And I am very thankful that he took the time to get so personal with me. The other person was Governor John Kasich. He invited me to Ohio to testify about gun safety laws. And while there, he took much of his time that day to just talk to me on a very personal, deep level about faith. For those who don't know, Governor Kasich is a man of deep faith. And I had to be honest with him. My faith in a higher power is shattered. But what was amazing about him is how he gave me hope and how he talked to me about going forward. And the truth is, since that day, I've realized my faith is actually probably stronger than it's ever been, but it's placed elsewhere. It's now placed directly in the people who surround me every single day. This guy gets his own slide. For those who don't know who he is, that's Congressman Ted Deutsch. For those of you who have heard me talk about him before, I affectionately call him my bromance. I didn't know him until the night that we buried Jaime. He wanted to come pay a shiva call at our house. I did not want any political people at my house. I was just angry at all of them. But his wife, Jill, and they've since become very dear friends of ours, was mutually friends with somebody that was friends with my sister. And my sister is very persistent and eventually got me to agree to let them come, but I put a rule on. I said, they've got 10 minutes. I greeted them in the driveway when they got to my house to make sure they understood the rule. I went out there with my finger wagging. I said, you got 10 minutes. And they came in for their 10 minutes, and they didn't leave. They spent the entire night with my family, and we fell in love that night. They are wonderful people. He has been my mentor. He has been my guide. He has been someone who has held me up at times that I have felt weak. And I'm very thankful to have him in my life. However, this is a relationship that never, ever, ever would have existed if not for the loss of my daughter. I can't talk about relationships without talking about our nation's children, because this is the one that is probably the most unexpectedly changed. Because like a lot of adults, I was worried about them. I didn't think they knew how to communicate. I thought they were all kind of lost in their phones. But we had it wrong. They do know how to communicate. They're fierce in their communication. They know what they want, and this is their weapon. They actually had the wherewithal that day to record what was happening. So you can't ignore the violence. And they are able to communicate, to strategize, to look forward, and to get in touch with each other in ways that leave us adults spinning and in their wake. Our kids are amazing, and I look forward to the future of this country with them in charge with real optimism. Oh, whoever's clapping, that's it. Another relationship that I should not have if not for this, but this one is going to save lives. You see, Congressman Wasserman Schultz and I were having a conversation before the last election, and we were talking about my mission. And we started talking about the 300 million weapons that are on the street right now that can be used to kill. And I was concerned about it because nobody's dealing with that reality. Well, that conversation led to us talking about ammunition and the fact that there's currently no required background check on ammunition. And out of that conversation, we wrote Jaime's Law, which is currently waiting for hearings, and it seeks to extend background checks to ammunition. And the day Jaime's Law becomes law, lives in this country will be saved. A relationship that exists only because of the murder of my daughter, but because of this relationship, Jaime will continue saving lives in this country. I want to talk to all of you about perspective and perseverance and strength. And for the kids in this room, I really want you to listen. Because we all have moments in life that we look at as the worst moment ever. I've had a lot of them. And I've been unemployed, unable to pay the bills. I've been a business owner, the highs and lows that go with that. I've been a corporate employee with the highs and lows that go with that. I've had a lot of moments that I say, wow, that was the worst. And the truth is, since the murder of my daughter, I look back, I can't remember most of them. The truth is, most of us, as we go through what we would consider a worst moment, you go forward a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you won't remember them. And I tell you this because when you truly are going through horrible, bad moments, you have levels of strength and resilience that you just don't know of until you're tested. And when you're going through a horrible, tough moment, I want you to think of my story or another story like it, and I want you to know you're going to be okay. I also want to let you all know it is in this country's worst moments, whether it be 9/11 or war, where our heroes and leaders are born. You look at my brother after 9/11. You look at Sully, who landed a plane on the Hudson. Okay? You look at these families that I fight with every day out of tragedy. It's out of the worst moments that our heroes and leaders are born. What matters, much more than the moment, is how you react and how you respond. And so, in this room, I know there are future heroes and leaders who will react and respond to their moment in a way that will be life-changing, and I look forward to watching that. To close, my daughter had a saying, dreams and dedication are a powerful combination. I have a dream of lowering the gun violence death rate in this country, and I dedicate the rest of my life to fighting with all of you to save as many lives as possible. Your lives are worth it. Thank you.